All right. There's always a super weird delay. All right. So welcome. I want to thank everybody for joining us for the second Interstate 1804 Out-of-State Alumni Panel. This panel is really a idea that I came up with to allow our students to explore the different states, right? Different areas, right? And know that there is employment outside of the state of Ohio. We are about 98% of our graduates stay within the state of Ohio, which I'm assuming the governor loves. But there are other things and other areas out there that are waiting for Bobcats to go and explore. And you would be amazed at different cities you go and you have on an OU shirt and people are literally tracking you down. So this is a great way to see who's out there. This is a great way for you all to network, right? If these people are in your industry or working for a company that you're interested in, this is a great way for you to also network because they are on LinkedIn and they're great individuals. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. So we have Mackenzie Boker. She is the Senior Social Media Manager for the website we all use, WebMD. Okay. When you think your arm is falling off and you want to be a doctor, you go to WebMD to find out why your arm is falling off, right? I have friends that live by their their internet-based medical degree, right? Just thanks to WebMD. So she's based in Atlanta, Georgia, which I think is a stomping ground for a lot of people. Atlanta is a very youthful, vibrant city. It's like my second home. I go there and my accent kicks in almost immediately. So we're excited to hear about how she crash landed in Atlanta. Next, we have who I call Barack Obama of Ohio University, but maybe that's too much of a hype. He's not going to like that. But we have Marquis. He is the content editor for the Dallas Cowboys. And he is working in the Dallas Fort Worth area. He also was in Philly prior to that. So he has some other experiences that he could talk about, two cities that he can represent. And then we have Kerry Tuttle. She is the senior account advisor for Edelman. And she is in the greater Chicago area. So if you are okay with the snow and you don't mind the wind slapping you in your face, then Chicago is definitely the place. Or if you're just addicted to Garrett's popcorn, then you already know Chicago is the place for you. So with that being said, I'm going to pull down my presentation, allow their faces to be center screen, and then I will allow you all to answer round robin the questions that I have for you.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, so the first question. Oh, and students, please use the chat. I love the chat. I love engaging. I like for you all to give your feedback. If you're like, oh my God, yes, please use the chat. It is there for you. And if you have questions, I will help get those out there to our panelists. So the first question is, as a rising senior and undergrad, what was your post-grad plans?
So I can kick it off here. Ironically enough, my post-graduation plan was I had a post-graduation internship with Edelman based out of New York City. So it's a pretty small world for me. I think that was solidified in maybe my top of spring semester. And so I use that as a springboard to my next opportunity.
I can go next. Hey, y'all, Mac in Atlanta. I'll be honest, I really wasn't sure what was next after graduation which for somebody who was type A and the J school grad, it was really hard for me to not know what was next. But I ended up, I feel like a little bit of an imposter here. I was an out-of-state student who came to Athens, and then I grew up about 2 hours outside of Atlanta, ended up back in Atlanta proper after graduation. So I ended up taking an opportunity with CNN. So I had interned with them my junior to senior year, and then ended up coming in as a freelancer. So a little bit different than what I think most folks are expecting when you graduate, which is that full-time gig. But, it was a great opportunity, and it felt like a good chance to kind of cannonball into an amazing brand.
And then Kerry from Chicago, good to meet you all. I did an intern to hire scenario. So I accepted an internship around New Year's Eve timeframe of my senior year so that I could enjoy spring semester without worrying about what was next. And then interned for a company, an agency here in Chicago for 3 months, and then was hired on. So that was the plan all along. So as much as I wanted to say like, I have a full-time job. I'm still glad that I did the internship, kind of feel it out test first.
I love that. It's also crazy that Marquis, you work for Edelman, and then we have Kerry that works for Edelman. So Edelman folks, put it on your radar, right? And then Mac, you were able to get in with CNN so early on, which you would have thought would have, I feel like that might be some people's like dream job, right? So that's really cool that you all were able to get your start that way. So I know when you talk about getting that first job out of college, right? We all just want it. I just want a job. I want to say I'm employed, right? I don't want to seem like I don't know what the heck I'm doing with my life, right? But instead of just, and maybe you did, because I kind of did it, right? You took the job because you just needed a job. But what were some factors when you talk about relocating, right? Not going back home, leaving familiar territory, exploring this new world where you may or may not have family. What were those factors that you all considered that kind of helped you make a sound move as opposed to just like shooting out the door?
So I'll speak for myself. I'll be totally honest and completely transparent. I just knew that I didn't want to go back home. So growing up in Ohio, graduating from Ohio University, obviously, I knew that my next step wasn't back to Ohio after a post-graduation internship. And so if I'm being completely transparent, I had two offers on the table. Neither of them had relocation, but I chose the role that was closest to my post-graduation internship because it was cheaper to move my stuff from New York to Philadelphia than it was to move my stuff from New York back to Ohio. And so it was a matter of what was the most fiscally responsible move for myself, but also what offered me the quickest opportunity to get on my feet to say that I had the full-time job.
Yeah, it's Mac. I think cost of living also played a big part. I was looking in New York, DC, Ohio, even though I was a Georgia Peach. I by the time I had graduated and I had family in Ohio, I think felt like home more than Atlanta, more than the greater Atlanta area. And then I looked at Atlanta proper, and cost of living came into play. Also thinking about the community and what you wanted to do, maybe 5 years down the line. Sometimes your first job, maybe you're only there for a year or two. So is it something where there might be other opportunities nearby that you can explore? Maybe there's a networking community that you can join, whether it's Bobcats or knitting or whatever you're into, just a group of folks that might be able to help the city feel more at home and also maybe bridge you to the next opportunity after that first gig.
So for me, I knew that I wanted a big city, but I also Midwest feel was important to me. And I learned that from interning in San Francisco, where I was like, cool city, not my people. So I had been to New York, had been to San Francisco. So I feel like it was like a case of Goldilocks where I was like, Chicago feels right. I had never been to Chicago before I moved here. So I just kind of went off the word of my best friend who was going to move here with me. And she was like, let's go to Chicago. So I went out, got a job here, and we just went for it. And it's been perfect. She's long gone from the city, but I'm like putting down my roots here. So I feel like that was definitely a scenario of like, I still want that Midwest feel, but I don't want to be in Columbus or Cleveland. So like, what's the next best option? And it was Chicago, where I felt like I could have a good network of Midwesterners, ex-Bobcats, ex-Big Ten people, just kind of like people who I felt like were on the same wavelength as me.
Just to jump in and interject really quickly, I know I'm representing for Dallas, Texas, but I'm such a big proponent or advocate of the city of Chicago. I had a graduate internship there as well, and I just fell in love with the city. So I definitely totally understand what you mean, Kerry, when it comes to just kind of planting your roots and feeling like home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to call myself Chicago stepchild when I was in undergrad. All my college friends are from Chicago. All of them. I don't know how I managed to do that. They're like, you're from Chicago too. I'm like, wow, I'm from here. Like, I'm from Detroit. What are y'all talking? What? Like, just totally just moved me to Chicago, But yeah, I literally live in Chicago part-time. And if you're a fan of Harold's Chicken, okay.
I live right by one.
Blessed.
Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing like mild sauce. And I am very picky when it comes to sauce, but mild sauce. Let me have it on everything, please. So, so I love this. I absolutely love it. So I remember when I was moving, right? I graduated with $0, no savings account, right? And I'm like, y'all, I'm going to Texas. I was giving away clothes. I had totally tripped out. I gave away some really nice clothes that I actually missed till today because I just knew I wasn't going to need it. I was just set, right? But then I was broke. And then the one company that I think I actually had the offer told me that they couldn't pay for me to move. And that totally changed everything, right? So how did you all prepare to move? Did anybody, and I know some of you have moved around twice, what was it like negotiating that moving expense, or just what did you do to prepare for that move overall, financially, mentally, emotionally, all of that?
Yeah, so for me, this is where I think for all the students online, I would definitely like grab a notepad and a pen. I utilize my my resources as a student at OU to help kind of navigate that process. I will talk to, if you're in the STIP School of Communication, the Diversity Board, especially if you are a minority of any sorts, they provide funding for you to go for that post-graduation internship. So they can apply the money even after graduation. And so that's one resource that I know a lot of students don't know about, but I think is extremely important. So, I mean, I had a savings account, but there wasn't much in it. And so it was one of those things where the $3,000, $4,000 they were able to give me to help relocate to New York then stretched me through relocating back to Philadelphia, which essentially kickstarted my career. And so that's how I was able to navigate it, using my resources at OU. And I definitely recommend that if you are a student in any respective school, each school has funding for even graduates or potential graduates. So just kind of utilize that resource to help them help navigate and mitigate those financial issues.
Do we want to go in the same order? If not, I can jump in. Okay. So I kind of had an advantage in knowing where I was going to go for the entire spring semester since I had accepted an internship. So I always had two jobs when I was working. One of them was, I forget the name of it, there was a term, but I worked for the Scripps College doing like blog content, stuff like that. It was one of those like internships through school, but you got paid for it. And then I worked in the Scripps lab as well. So I was able to kind of like stockpile money to hold me over during my actual internship, where I stayed in an Airbnb with another person for 3 months. So I think that's like the biggest thing, is like temper your expectations of what your living situation is going to be like right off the bat. Like definitely have been there in terms of 4 roommates shoved into a 3-bedroom apartment that is actually like 600 square feet. And so I think it's like, you know, making the dream work whichever way you can, and understanding like where you're going to be able to cut corners. But yeah, I definitely had an advantage in terms of like having those 15 weeks to know what the price was, what my budget was, to actually be able to move and save up ahead of time.
I feel a little bit like a cheater because I had interned with CNN and then came home. Even though it was a 2-hour commute, I was able to at least commute. Kerry, like you, had one of the internships I did, like Ohio Today, and then I worked as a tour guide for all 4 years. So I had saved a little bit of money, but I was had a little bit of a, even though again, I'd hate to think how many miles I put on that poor Ford Fusion, 2 hours into the city. And if you've ever driven through Atlanta, Lord, you know it's not easy. But I was commuting back and forth for a little bit before, I was able to make the move closer in. But because I had that nest egg from at least saving whatever pennies I had made in college, it made getting that first apartment a little bit more manageable.
So
one thing I want to jump in on really quickly is I think another resource that I tapped into while being at OU was the person who housed me. The apartment that I stayed in when I was in New York was actually was an Ohio University alum. And so when we get back into being able to use the resources on campus and then being able to tap into that network externally to then obviously take the money that I got from the school and get subsidized subsidize housing in regards to that person cutting me a deal on rent because New York City is extremely expensive. I was able to use my resources 2 times over to then be able to intern at Edelman to, again, kickstart my career. So again, the resources that you have at your fingertips shouldn't fall by the wayside, but really utilize them because they can help you pivot to your next step.
I feel like I should be DJ Khaled because you guys are like dropping major keys. So I'm really like, I need the major key alert to sound off right about now. I love that. Utilizing your resources, right? Asking questions. We are familiar with quiet mouths don't get fed. I don't know how grammatically correct that sentence is, but you need to ask, right? You never know who knows who. You need to broaden your OU network. Bobcats clearly help other Bobcats out, right? And you need to save some money. And I know that is difficult. I learned the hard way. I worked 4 jobs in the summer to pack in a couple $1,000s before I left Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Right. But you need to start saving. If you need a savings account, look for student savings accounts, right? Where you don't get charged fees. PNC Virtual Wallet is amazing. It's 3 accounts that no fees included. One is a growth account. Absolutely loved it. I kept it. I got mine in grad school and kept it for 7 years. So I was a full-fledged adult with a student account because you get to keep it for 7 years. So Chase has one. So even if you want to do a credit union, right? But you need to put your money away as opposed to stuffing it in your wallet or in your house somewhere because you're going to touch it. And maybe don't even get a debit card for that account if you need to be held that accountable. But I thank you all for sharing that. And Kerry, for you to even talking about your living arrangement, right? And how to maybe lessen that, yeah. Be a little bit more realistic, because I have a friend in New York and she's like, I need to move some stuff around in my room. And I'm like, well, what about this? Well, put on your dresser. No, I can't. You know, and she's like, my place is just that small.
Yeah.
About $1,000-something for it. So knowing how to adjust maybe how you would like to live for the sake of your dream for the time being.
I'd also add too that I feel like a lot of jobs, especially those in the media, content, PR realm, are not going to help with moving costs, unfortunately. But I do think that there are a lot of questions that you can ask of a company that you're interning for or that you're hired by in terms of benefits. Do they pay for your transportation? Like, are they going to comp your pass for the Metro or whatever subway you're taking? Is there a gym membership that they'll pay for that you have access to? So different types, for example, because I was in a certain building with a PNC bank, they waived the annual fee for me to have an account. So like different perks like that, I think you can take advantage of when you're right off the bat to save some dollars. Because typically relocation costs are not going to be covered, but there are different workarounds that you can find in terms of extra perks and benefits.
And I do kind of want to jump in and say I live in the media space, and I've been blessed enough to have my relocation covered twice. And so I don't want to discourage you guys. You do live in the media or PR space that you won't be covered because the company may not deem it to be as important as other roles. Know that it's possible. Know that there are resources out there. I think it's also about asking questions, and also the way kind of budget works from the corporate side. You guys may be able to negotiate a relocation package, and maybe it's reflected in other ways, like maybe it's a sign-on bonus, or maybe it's they lower your salary to then get you to the property or to the corporation or headquarters. So those are all different factors that you'll learn just throughout the negotiation process, but just do understand that there's money and resources available to get you where you need to be. So don't be discouraged by the idea that maybe relocation wasn't your initial offer.
Yep. Those are excellent points, and don't be afraid to ask. I think you won't know unless you ask. You might be the only one that gets a relocation fee out of your incoming class because you asked, right? And you asked first. So you're right. You can reap those in other ways, right? So having a flex spending account for your health insurance, or, paid time off, right? A couple of days added to your paid time off bank. So there's a lot of different ways, but you should ask. They paid for me to relocate from Michigan to Ohio University, right? Although I will be honest, be sure that your relocation money doesn't come with stipulations. Mine's did. If I left any time before 2 years I would have had to pay a certain percentage of it back. It took a very long time to work off even 50% of it. So luckily I'm on my 4th year, so I'm good. That debt is gone. But if I would have hated it in Athens and wanted to move, I would have had to pay all that money back. So definitely ask. But if you can't get that, don't get discouraged. Marquis put a good thought out there. You can get that. Marquis put a different thought out there. You can get that. You can reap that in other ways. So Mac, did you want to add something else to that?
No, I was just thinking a couple of summers ago, we actually had an amazing intern. She's a contractor now with MD. She was from a Bobcat, and she was from Cleveland and made the jump down to Atlanta. And we weren't able to offer her relocation, but because I was a Bobcat as well, we were able to find her. She spent the summer in a tiny home in like an amazing part of town and just had a great experience, and ended up coming back that next summer, getting a full roommate. So sometimes making the jump can be really scary, but it was a paid internship, right? So there were other perks that you could, and the tiny home was, I think, an Airbnb that was a little bit more affordable, and it was now she can say she lived in a tiny home. So sometimes the packaging certainly looks different than what you anticipated, but.
Absolutely. All right. So all of those keys dropped, right? So tell me about when you actually touched down, right? You moved, you have your new place, right? What was it like? Because I think a lot of us move to areas where you don't have family or friends, right? Especially friends, because we all make our friends in college, right? A lot of them come from college and then we all separate. But what was it like when you moved, right? How did you get to know the area? How did you, learn your way to get to work, the fastest route? How did you make friends, right? How did you start developing that social life? How was it being away from your significant other or your family members? Like, give me a good overview of what it was like your first year being in your new city or your new area.
I'm going to sound super redundant, but I tap into the Bobcat network. So I was able to get a post-graduation internship, like I said before, and I had 3 other Bobcats in that same cohort. And so that made my transition to New York City a lot easier. I think you had quite a few questions, but I think how we handle just our relationships outside of just our respective area. I was dating my now fiance then, and it was rough. It feels like an extension of a college year, right? It's like, well, I still don't have money. I'm in the real world, but I still want to obviously enjoy the time that I'm here. And so that was difficult to navigate. And I think that's per person, how you kind of approach that and how you handle that. But I think overall, it was good. I used my Bobcat network to kind of make friends. And from that cohort of people, we were able to just kind of grow from there.
I think I sort of have a unique perspective on this because I certainly moved to Atlanta, and I think like all y'all, made so many of my dearest friends in college, none of which were in Atlanta. But then a couple years later, I married a Bobcat. So he moved down a couple years later. So it was interesting. I kind of had the experience of learning Atlanta, but then I had this person who was moving here and experiencing it in real time. And I think, and golly, he's got, I think, more friends in Atlanta than I do now. And I think, part of that is just putting yourself out there, as cheesy as that sounds, but whether it's through a networking group or it's grabbing coffee with somebody at work that maybe looks, seems like you guys might be friends. I think it's just joining a new gym. You meet people anywhere. It's no different than like the first day at OU when maybe you didn't know anybody. It's that same kind of process, and there can be growing pains with it. I think my husband in particular, he missed Cleveland, something fierce for like the first year. And then, said he hated Atlanta, and now he loves it. And he's been here 8 years. So I think that it's just give yourself grace, give yourself time. It's okay to be homesick, but also know that with a new city comes a lot of new friends and a lot of new things to discover about yourself. You just sort of have to put yourself out there and be open to it.
Yeah, I think echoing on that too, like asking to be included in things where typically I would be more of the person to sit back and wait for someone to invite me along for the ride. But instead saying like, oh, for example, I moved here and someone else that I didn't know that well from OU, but knew a friend of a friend, I said, do you want to live together for 3 months before my roommate, who I'm planning to live with, moves here, who's also a Bobcat? A Bobcat referred me to my job, so I worked with her for a little bit, and I'm like, hey, can I come and join your softball team? So I played with her softball team for a summer, like intramural sports, met a ton of people that way. Actually like participating in the happy hours, actually going to coffee, like using being new to the city and new to your job as an excuse to like put it on other people to welcome you. And so I think like take advantage of that as an excuse to say like, hey, can you grab coffee with me? I want to pick your brain about the city, like keep it light. That's something that I definitely did to just expand my network right off the bat, since it's, there's less situations like college that you just fall into in terms of making friends. You kind of actually have to like construct them yourself.
I love that. He basically put the onus on them.
Yeah.
And social media, I think, is also a great resource. I think we should think how to use our resources constructively. I think social media is a great place to kind of cultivate that even digital community to then meet later. I know there's a bunch of different apps, but I know that even Instagram, for us to figure out, well, what's the best place to meet? What's the center point for all of us? Like, those are all different resources you can use to, again, cultivate that community.
I think like too, like follow through. I mean, if you're DMing with someone on Instagram and they're like, yeah, let's meet when you get here, like actually make it happen. I think like that's a big thing as well, versus just having it be like, that typical, we should meet up, then it never happens. Like, make it happen.
Like, oh, sure. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and also don't be afraid to do things on your own, right? So even me being in Athens, I love the movies, y'all. You a $4 movie and $1 popcorn, sign me up any day. All right. That is just my thing. And I don't mind going by myself, right? So don't be afraid to do things by yourself, right? Just to get a feel for the city. Try to make it home. I'll be honest and say that I've been one that my house still doesn't feel like a home, because I'm always like, well, this is not where I'm staying. I'm off to something new next, right? So I haven't even really I just added a couple pictures to the wall because I'm thinking about what's next as opposed to enjoying the moment, right? So allow yourself to settle in, allow yourself to, establish even temporary roots, right? Plant 2 roots, maybe not the whole tree, but definitely get out and try new things, explore your area, go eat by yourself. I know y'all like that is weird, but I mean, let me tell you, sit at the bar and eat, somebody will come talk to you. The bartender will talk to you, somebody, but definitely don't be afraid to get out, because you even taking the metro might be a way to meet somebody, you even going for a walk, especially if you got an animal, or playing sports. Cause I also play sports too. I play softball in Athens, right? And that's how I also met people. So these are actually great tips that they're giving you all when you're thinking about trying to adjust to a new area.
I think too, I mean, something that I've always done for folks and had done for me from a fellow Bobcat at CNN is asking for like a bucket list of somebody's favorite places. So if you do get connected to somebody and you're not sure, it feels like there's information overload, or you're not sure what to ask somebody, asking for like a bucket list of their favorite things to do, or maybe there's festivals or even places to eat. Those are a great starting point if you're not sure what to ask somebody about a new city, other than like, do you like it? Like, well, what do you like to do? Where do you like to go? What's good to eat here? I'm Italian, so it all comes back to food, but you can really kind of get the conversation started that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we're nearing the end of our time. So when you think about graduation, right? Take y'all back a couple years, right? Graduation, where you ended up, where you are now. Is there anything that you would do over, or, well, 2 things, anything that you would do over, and then maybe what is a piece of advice that you would give to yourself, when you were graduating and talking about, I'm going to go be an adult now. I'm a big kid, right? I'm ready to do this. What is that piece of advice you would want to give to yourself?
I'm not one to live in the past, so I don't know if there's anything that I would do over. I think every single experience, from the friends that I made to the cities that I lived in, kind of just shaped and molded just my own personal trajectory. And I think you get that opportunity with either failed experiences, exceptional experiences, and everything in between. So for me, I wouldn't do anything over. I think a piece of advice I would give to myself, I would use my resources 10 times more than I already have. I know that for each person, each circumstance is very different. Some people have the opportunity to save in college, some people don't, but recognizing that that shouldn't be the determination or the determining factor as to whether or not you're going to be successful post-graduation. And so just for me, just kind of that validation that even if you don't have it, you're okay, because your resume, your work ethic, and your experience kind of speaks for itself. So that I would just reaffirm myself of that, but I don't know that there's anything that I would do differently up to this point.
Yeah, I have to echo that. I don't think I would change anything, maybe other than asking Bagel Street their recipe for how they steam those delicious bagels. But, I think that's such a good point. I mean, my first full-time gig with CNN, I went in at midnight, left at 8 a.m. on Friday night. So that was like I would work 7 a.m. to 3, Thursday, Friday, go in at midnight. So I had like a 10-hour turnaround. I mean, I worked like this crazy schedule, and it was in broadcast. I graduated with a magazine journalism degree, and I truly have no regrets, because now I know how to do video editing, and I can script write, and all of these skills that maybe don't fit that perfect first job that you thought you would have really ends up being an amazing building block and taking you further than you ever thought you might go, or it takes you down a really cool, neat path. So my advice, if I could go back, would be have grace with yourself. My mom said this to me when I graduated, and it's always stuck with me, is like, you never see like a second grader not potty trained. You don't see, a sixth grader not able to maybe read, a book. It's maybe it takes somebody a little bit longer, but it's your race, run it. And, you'll get to where you need to be if you just keep knocking on doors and being persistent and not giving up on what you want. But speaking it, be your biggest cheerleader and give yourself grace, I think, is what it comes down to for me.
I don't have any regrets, but I definitely have lessons that I learned because of mistakes that I made. So I can try to use those as learnings for everyone else. I think it's really easy you just worked so hard in college, now you've graduated, and now you're in this new job, and you're going to put everything you have into it. I think one of the things is to make sure that you're drawing a line between how much you're willing to give of yourself to your job and how much you're actually going to balance a personal life and your own health with that. So being really intentional about creating a routine. When are you going to work out? When are you going to read a book? How are you not going to get sucked into the vortex of your work life? I think that was something that I was surprised about in terms of having to be more, having to set harder boundaries than I had originally anticipated that I would need to do. So I think just having that in the back of your mind in terms of it's not just your job, but also how are you ensuring that you have a healthy environment outside of it?
That's actually an awesome point, Kerry. I'm going to echo you. I think work-life balance is extremely important. And I think that they don't teach us that, or they don't speak to that enough. Any full-time role, I think, inherently comes with 60 plus hours, and they tell you it's 40, but it's a lot more time. And so recognizing what a true balance looks like and then setting boundaries, I think is an extremely important point. So that's a good talking point.
Yeah, I think I was surprised because I was going to graduate and I'm like, I'm going to have so much time on my hands. I'm just going to have to go to work at 8 and then I'm going to be done at 5 and I'm going to have all night to do stuff. Yeah. And you don't realize you're going to be exhausted at the end of the day and you're going to be like, I don't have time to go to the grocery store, when in Athens you were like, I'm going to take a nap at 2 p.m. It was very different schedule wise. So that was a big wake up call for me.
Especially now in the middle of a pandemic, I found myself, I'm sure we all have, staying on later, logging on earlier. And I have 2 rescues, and I've started, instead of commuting home, I've taken them for a walk, because that feels like my commute home. And it signals to me that okay, I'm leaving the work shenanigans, the work goodness behind and trying to kind of create that balance. So yeah, I mean, right now that work-life balance, I'm sure even for students feels tough, but there are little things that you can do to sort of create that space for yourself, because if you don't, the burnout is so real, and it can be really hard to bounce back from. It's not as easy as taking a 2 p.m. nap or even a week off sometimes. And you don't want to burn yourself out on something that you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Great advice. You are so right. I'm like, once I don't have homework, I'm gonna have all the time in the world. I'm gonna be a fitness model. Not really, y'all, but I thought I was gonna be just like so in shape. That did not happen. I actually gained weight, right? And now I'm reversing all of that bad juju that happened when I was learning how to adjust, to my new environment. So all of those things are key, right? And taking time for yourself. I think we do talk about well-being, right, for people that are employed on campus. But it's funny because when we coach students and we ask them like this well-being question in mock interviews, everybody freezes. Like, wait, what does that mean? Right? Wait, that's a leadership skill? Like, yes, it is, right? How do you take care of you? If you're not okay, nobody is okay. You're not doing your job effectively, right? So you have to make sure that you're okay. So whether that's getting a therapist, right? Whether that is making sure you take your animal for a walk, which I run out the door every day. Right, we're doing this 2 miles. I don't care. I will drag her along with me. Like, we're going to walk, sis. Let's go. Or whether it's talking to your mom at a certain time every day, right? Or building out time for your significant other, right? If that's going to rejuvenate you, if it's reading a book, if that's going to rejuvenate you, then you have to be intentional and build that in, because it is very easy to get sucked into this new job, this new life, the responsibilities, wanting to look good at work, and naps. Oh, Lord, if y'all can find time to take them, bless you, because I miss naps. I really do. Doesn't happen. I'll lay down and still be awake. So I don't even attempt it anymore, but definitely be intentional. I think with your time was probably the greatest point you all pointed out, and to prioritize yourself, right? Yes, you need this job. Yes, you need the money. You've always wanted this, but you have to still be selfish and prioritize yourself and know when to say no, know when to say I'm unavailable, know when to take vacation time, right? And not feel guilty about it, and know when to shut your laptop off or your work phone off when applicable, and not let that cause you anxiety, because the burnout, you are so right, Mac, is so real. And you don't want that in something that you love. But if that does happen, guess what? We can regroup, but we don't want that to happen to you. But it's also okay to take a career shift if you feel that that's where you're at in your life. But I thank y'all. That was good. You all dropped a lot of keys. And things that I didn't even know about. I'm like, dang, I need to brush up on my own resources. So I thank you all for sharing that. I would like to see if there's anybody that is listening that will have a question that they want to pose about the cities that these individuals are in, about their jobs, their career path, or just any advice. But feel free, you all can come off mute if you would like, or you can put questions in the chat. But definitely don't let the opportunity pass and you have a question burning on the inside of your soul.
Hi, Tamika. It's Virginia.
Hey, Virginia. Virginia gives the best cars. She used to work in the OU like Enterprise. Always gave me the Impala. Always gave me the Impala. Go ahead.
Oh, it's good to see you. I just was going to ask, like, how often do you guys like see your families and stuff, since you're kind of far? Like, how is it with that? And, like, living away from family? I've never like experienced that yet, like where I've been like so far I couldn't drive. It's always been a couple hours, but I was just curious like how it's going for you.
So kind of in response to your previous response, Kerry, I think when it comes to just prioritizing myself, I've now made the strides to move closer to family, because when I took the role with the Cowboys, I was on road, I traveled with the team. And so now for me, I've now put myself in a different role to work for myself, start my own business so that I could prioritize family, because that's important for me. So as of now, it's a 2-hour flight, but it used to be a 9-hour drive.
I mean, I think definitely when you first move, maybe creating a little bit of space so that you give yourself a chance to get over that homesickness. But, we try to, see both sides of our family. My husband's family still lives in Cleveland. And even though it's a 2-hour drive, sometimes it feels like it might as well be a 2-hour flight to my mom's house, because it's all the way out. I mean, she lives, God bless her, all the way out in the country. And so we try to try to make it a priority, whether it's once a quarter, whatever it may be, but try to get home to Cleveland and to the countryside of Georgia at least once a quarter. But remember that the beauty of now, right, is that you can FaceTime, you can Zoom. I mean, there are other opportunities to see the people that you love and to stay connected to them. It just might look a little bit different than maybe that in-person Sunday night dinner that y'all were used to. But it doesn't mean you can't stay connected, and you can miss something fierce. But I think there are ways that you can still enjoy their company.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago's not too far from Cleveland, but I'm gonna sound like a horrible daughter saying this, but I still only see my family like 2 to 3 times a year. It's really important for me to have my life here in Chicago. Like, I'm an adult, I've built my own life here, I have friends here, I have a partner here. Like, it's not always on me to go back. They also come here to see me. So I think that's something too, when you move somewhere, like, give yourself 6 months before you then invite them to come and you show them your new city, or you go back home. Like, I think it's really important to give yourself that time to like build out your life without mom and dad or grandparents, like whoever's close to you. Hopefully that doesn't sound very cold and heartless.
I don't think so. I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And I love that you said don't put the onus on you to feel like you have to always travel to them, right? They have to, they can come see you too, because my parents have came to Athens twice. That's a blessing, right? And they were in my little apartment. They were the reason I even got a kitchen table, right? So sometimes company is good because it makes you spruce up just a little bit.
Yep.
For sure. Well, Destiny had a question that I want to make sure you all got to. She said, how long did it take before things got normal, right? Like after you moved, so like you feel like this is not like, oh, I'm new, right? But it felt good.
Kerry kind of like outlined that timeline of 6 months. I think that's actually a good starting point. Just to put it in context for you guys, if you get paid bi-weekly, that's what, 12 paychecks. And so if you think about just what it takes to kind of get moved, get back on your feet, get your space furnished, kind of start a savings to say, I feel comfortable here. That falls in that timeline of 12 checks, right? And so I think 6 months is a reasonable timeline, and believe it or not, it'll fly. Your first 90 days at work will come and go. And so that's one fiscal quarter. So you just think about how fast life really does move. I think 6 months is a reasonable timeline for me to get back to normal.
I also think it's interesting just because my husband also made the move to Atlanta. He always says that he was a kid that didn't enjoy sleepovers. Like he always was the kid that went home in the middle of the night and got a stomachache. And I think for him, maybe that move, his homesickness was a little bit more real. And I kind of think, probably because he didn't even like to be away from home as like a little tiny tot. So I think for him, it took maybe longer, 9 months, maybe even a year before but he loved Cleveland. And so, I think, but now he loves Atlanta, but I think it just 6 months or to a year, depending on kind of where you fall on that. How often were you visiting home in college? How often, were you comfortable doing sleepovers? I know that stuff sounds silly, but, some of that, if you're a homebody, maybe that move is a little bit tougher. So if it doesn't feel right after 6 months, don't give up. I think give yourself a little bit more space to continue to learn more about where you're at and what you love about it, and invite your friends, invite your family, invite them in to see all the cool things that you love about Dallas or Chicago or Atlanta.
Yeah, I think they say it takes 6 months to feel like you know what you're doing at work. Like when you start a new job, it's typically the time frame. I remember when I was in high school, a teacher who got engaged after a year said that the best advice she received was not to agree to marry someone until you see them through all 4 seasons. And I feel like a city is the same way. Like, see the city through all 4 seasons before you probably are like, okay, this feels normal to me, or this feels home. Like, you can see it, all sides of it, for like a full year. I think that's when you'll really be like, it'll feel normal because you'll be able to say, oh yeah, last summer I was here and did this. And so you can kind of like compare and contrast.
I think that's great. I also think decorating your place, right? Not having a half empty space, right? Filling those rooms up helps as well. I think the more furniture I got, the more I was actually like, oh, I'm gonna put this color in here and this color there, and I'm gonna get a whole bathroom set instead of a random trash can and just the shower liner, right? The more I actually put into like making my space feel like home, right? The better off it was. So buying that new TV, buying an actual TV stand, right? The things that you probably skipped over in college, right? Or y'all got when people were throwing stuff out, right? Actually buying those things for yourself and being intentional with it, I think could really help your home feel like space, because you're going out into this foreign world, getting to know it, but then making sure you can come back to your space. And this is my space. I know even if my cubicle or my office still feels a little weird, right? This is my space. So definitely invest in your house, because I think that for a lot of people is we spend the most time, at least we want to lay our heads there and rest. So, but it does take time. It took me about a year or so. So yeah.
I think one other thing, which I haven't mentioned yet, and I actually did this more when I was in San Francisco than I did in Chicago, but it helped me acclimate myself to the city when I was on a very minimal budget. But like, don't rely on an Uber or a Lyft to just, you put your head down, you're on your phone, you're not paying attention. Like, if your city has public transportation that's usable, take it. And so like each weekend I would pick a coffee shop in a neighborhood because I can pay for a $4 cup of coffee. I would take my public transportation there, go to this new coffee shop, and I would spend an hour walking around this neighborhood. And that would be my like adventure for the weekend. And it was $4. So that was one other way that I felt like, okay, I know the city. I know these streets intersect. I've been to this neighborhood before. I think that can make you start feeling a little bit more comfortable. And it's like very low stress in terms of, and you can also do it by yourself.
I love it. They even have an app to tell you how to take the train. My friends told me that about New York. I don't trust it, y'all. I don't do public transportation. I'm gonna be lost. But there are apps to help you kind of navigate bus systems, train systems, and things like that in these bigger cities. So don't be fearful. Have more courage than what I do, for sure. Is there any last questions? We have a couple more minutes, but I want to make sure if there was another question, we got to it. I also don't believe in holding people to the exact time if not necessary. All right. So gave that awkward silence, nothing came of it. But if you do come up with questions, if you are intrigued by these individuals, you can find them on LinkedIn. You have their names. They're sitting right there on the screen. So you should, except for Mackenzie. Mackenzie is Mackenzie Boker, Bowker. So there you go. No, you're fine. You're fine. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope you walked away with something, whether it was exploring a new city, whether it was learning about their cool careers, or maybe you just want to try this event out because you haven't been to one of Tamika's famous events. I'm glad you stopped by, and we love to have you. There will be a C10 Career in 10 Minutes if you haven't heard of that. That will be coming up on March 23rd. We're going to feature some really cool companies that I consider to be diversity centered. So Nationwide, Watts Waters, and tentatively Hycom Pharmaceuticals, but I think they're definitely going to be here. So check Handshake, look for the events. These are great opportunities to get you all engaged. I want to get you to your dream job, to your dream city. This is how we're going to do it. So keep engaging. If you want to meet with me, book a career coaching appointment, tell a friend to come watch this video. I know it'll be a blessing. And now we have two with different cities. So definitely check both of those out on our Ohio CODC YouTube page. Thank you to my wonderful panel. Congratulations and your success. I appreciate you all for giving back to your university. And you all have a fantastic night.
Thank you. Good to meet you
Bye,
all.
y'all. Enjoy your weekend. Eat some Bagel Street for me.